Hey everybody, and welcome to Let's Look at N++. This is the sequel to a game that I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with. N+ originally came out kind of like Super Meat Boy before Super Meat Boy even existed, and it was a Flash game that was later ported to Xbox Live Arcade in 2008, and then N++ came out last year in 2015, only on PlayStation 4 to the best of my knowledge. Finally, the Steam version is here, and I've played a little bit more than an hour so far, and I'm ready to give you my thoughts. This is $20 on PSN, so I'm assuming it's going to be $20 on Steam, but I'm not fully sure how much it is when it actually comes out. Although I will say, in case there's any confusion, I'm playing the PC version right here. So I played through all of the intro levels, if I can move back here. So that was like 30 of these levels. And I'll do my best to, sight read as we go through these future levels and explain what's going on. So every one of those levels is a campaign, by the way. So that's actually 150 levels right off the bat there. I'm just going to start this one over because I fudged it up a little bit. This is a platformer that's meant to be kind of like, tough as nails, Super Meat Boy-esque. Even though it was originally around before Super Meat Boy, it still makes sense, I think, to compare it to Super Meat Boy. It's like its closest competitor, or closest contemporary, if that makes sense. Now, the central premise of the game is that you want to complete these campaigns. They call them episodes, but each episode consists of 5 levels. You have 90 seconds to beat them, but I believe you get more time or more points based on the number of these little power-ups that we pick up right here. As you can see, when we pick these up, that time bar at the top is extending. I have to be honest, I have not found it very challenging so far to complete any of the episodes in 90 seconds, but I think it's almost got like a little bit of that Trials-y thing going on right now, where your goal is to get perfect on everything, basically, and do it as quickly as possible. Now, there is a wide variety of ways to meet your death here, and we'll show off some of those once I show off, hopefully first a little bit of adequacy. But the real, central joy of the game is in, oh yeah, I knew we were gonna get smoked there. The central joy of the game is in, learning to master the movement system. Like, it's a game where momentum is extremely important, even more so than a game like Super Meat Boy, I'd say. And that's not to say that one of them is necessarily better than the other one, at least not yet, but movement and momentum is an extremely important part of actually, mastering the intricacies of N++. You're a lot slower and a lot weightier, but you also respond more, oh god, to environmental pressures, if that makes sense. Like, we gain more speed from hitting like slanted game objects like we did right there, and we can also gain higher and higher altitudes on jumps if we can chain them together with things that are moving in other directions or things that are pointing up, if that makes sense. I'm getting distracted here because I'm trying to also make this happen. Again, you're gonna notice that there are some Super Meat Boy-esque obstacles here, including these homing missiles here. I'm not gonna go ahead and say one was stolen from the other because I'm ignorant of who the originator is, and even Super Meat Boy, if that came out first and introduced these homing missiles, was probably not the first game in history with homing missiles, is my guess. But we'll keep moving on here. Like I was trying to say before I completely made myself look extraordinarily inelegant, I think you get more mileage out of this if you're the kind of person who likes playing Trials but refuses to leave a level until you get all the points. And sometimes I find myself being that kind of guy. Sometimes I find myself not being that kind of guy. Sometimes I can get through the level and just be like, ooh, that was a challenge. No way am I going to worry about doing faultless. Sometimes I'm not, though. There are some intricacies as well when it comes to landing. Like, for example, from a high jump, past a certain point, it's obviously going to be lethal to fall, but if you land on a slanted platform, then it's not going to necessarily have high of a risk of killing you. In fact, I think that's pretty much just the way that you survive those falls here. By the way, if you're wondering why on the leaderboards I'm fairly low, I think it's because there was a beta testing period for the game. So hardcore players and casual players have united, perhaps. Oh, I landed it. And created a situation in which I look maybe even worse than I am, although I'm also pretty bad at it. So I don't believe you're penalized for, these deaths that I'm getting myself here as well. But I'm trying to do my best to convey the central joy of what happens at N++. Because it really is something where if you don't buy into that, like, momentum, I think you're gonna find yourself being like, you know, where's the store? You know, it's a mechanics-driven game, and if you're just like, well, there's the switch to open the exit, and I got, you know, half of the things, and now I opened the exit and got through. If you're not worried about like leaderboard chasing, you may find yourself like not really having that sticky of a time, if you know what I mean. You may find yourself not being compelled to play as much as maybe you've played as some other games of this sort. So I really think that it kind of feeds into that like little leaderboard chasing that some of us have within us and some of us don't. And if I'm being honest, I don't really have as much of that within me for a game like this as I do in some other games. But that may be because I'm already being outclassed by people who are much better than me. That was not very good right there. But for my money, I do prefer when games like this have like a little bit of a story. But I know that, or a little bit of a hook beyond just, you know, the mechanics and the fact that there's like 1,000 levels that take a minute each to beat, you know? There we go. But I know that a lot of people disagree with me on that, and I know that N++ was extremely well received when it came out. And I don't think it's a bad game by any stretch of the imagination. I will say, though, you know, it was a different era when N+ came out, and admittedly, I'm not exceptionally familiar with it. I only played maybe, you know, 2 or 3 hours of N+ when it came out on Xbox Live Arcade. But, you know, the industry's changed a lot, and N++ does feel like a refinement to the best of my memory of what the original was like. But I'm not sure if it's as impressive as it was. Like, the formula, I don't know if it makes the sales as easily as it did back in the day when... Not to say this is going to sound like overly offensive to the game, and I don't mean it like that, but, you know, back in the day, we're like, oh my god. A company that isn't Electronic Arts, Ubisoft, or Square Enix put out a video game and it's only $15? Like, what is this world coming to? I've never seen this before. It's incredible. Oh, I'm screwed. Now, it's a little bit, I mean, we take it for granted, but the indie scene is in such a healthy place that I just feel like N++ has lost some of the novelty that maybe the original N+ had, because there's a lot of quote-unquote, you know, tough as nails, mega hard platformers, and I think this is up there. You know, I like this more than something like a Cloudberry Kingdom or something like that, but does it hit the heights of maybe a Super Meat Boy? Maybe not. Am I, you know, glossing over some of the problems with Super Meat Boy as a result of it having been like 5 years since I played the game, and also, you know, it being a formative game for me as a young adult? It's possible as well. But I will say that I find myself, as I'm playing this, I'm like, Nick is gonna love this. I'm not sure if it's 100% for me. It's like Trials mixed with Super Meat Boy. And I find myself just kind of being like, on some of the levels, like this one, I'm like, I'll give it a try. I'll try to grab as many of the things as I actually can. And I have a huge tolerance for trial and error because I'm not very good at solving puzzles to begin with. So I'm very much insulated from that whole, like, I don't like to try multiple things, you know? I have no problem with that, and I have no problem, you know, being witness to my own failure over and over. That's just my daily life, you know? Here we go, finally made that one with at least most of them. That's just my daily life. But I do still find myself being like, you know, if I don't get it on like the first 10 attempts, then I'm like, I don't really want to do 100 attempts to get it. I'm just gonna move along. But there are some levels that are extremely well designed, and I think elevated beyond just being like pretty darn good. Give me a sec here. I will say that if it does come out at $20, it's a little on the steep side. Again, it's not the only game in this genre, and I'm not trying to, I'm okay. I'm not trying to put myself, you know, in the shoes of the developers and be like, I would have released it at $5 or something like that. But I do think, you know, it has its own unique kind of visual gimmick going for it, but it's not the kind of thing that necessarily makes me look at it and go like, oh, this is... Wait, were we 8th in the world there? That seems unlikely, but I'll take it. It's not the kind of... Maybe we were 108th? I didn't see a 1 in front of it, but I'll take it. It's not the kind of thing that makes you stand up and say like, whoa, how did they do this? Like... You know, it definitely, a lot of work has gone into this, but it seems like the design of the levels and the mechanics are more important. And it's really hard, actually, on video, just when you're watching it, to convey the fact that the movement really does have a lot of joy associated with it. Like, the momentum is part and parcel with what you're doing in the game, and it makes a huge difference. Like, if you can probably just jump through these platforms, and I'm gonna kill myself so I can get some more here, but, you can probably just jump through these and do fine, but if you're really trying to score attack, oh, that was not very good either. If you're really trying to score attack, you know, you've got to conserve your momentum as best as possible and take, like, the ideal routes through levels. So I really feel like I'm starting to get to the point that I'm trying to articulate and have struggled with so far, which is that, you know, it's almost a little too easy the game allows you to be bad at it and still succeed, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I almost would have preferred, and I may still be relatively early in the game so far, but I almost would have preferred for it to be a little bit more, yeah, that's gonna hurt. I almost would have preferred for it to be like a little bit more draconian, actually, and for it to have been like, you know what? You actually can't succeed on these levels until you truly understand, you know, what the hell you're actually doing in the game. And I think that would have been more positive to teach the mechanics, because as of right now, I'm just like, well, you know, I'll die on this level a few times. That seems pretty obvious, but retry, please. I also can get through this level without really solving the central gimmick, if that makes sense. And I do think that for me personally, at least, that's not where I want to be on the design, you know? Like, I could beat this level and get, every time I will avoid getting the switch right off the bat. I almost would like the game to punish you a little bit more. I would like there to be less of a gap between being able to beat the level and being able to, like, flawless the level as best as possible. And again, you can argue that, like, I'm pretty early on in things here, but, I mean, I've played more than an hour, and I'm still kind of doing these levels where I'm like, if I didn't push myself, I really have no reason to actually die on these levels. Like, to just complete the level is basically no problem, and that's kind of a foreign feeling in these games, but I will accept that it's also just completely plausible that maybe I'm missing the gimmick. Maybe, oh, that's dead, yeah. Maybe I'm actually missing, you know, the central conceit of N++, and people who are, like, super fans of the game are gonna be like, you don't understand what you're doing. You know, the game is all about that perfection and making sure that you get, like, the maximum possible, like, efficiency and flow state on each level. That may be the case, and I may just be bad. And that's why I always encourage you to watch other content creators. Now, don't take this at all as me saying N++ is a bad game, but I know there's been a lot of hype for it, and I was hyped for it as well, and, you know, I've been having a good time playing it. It's a very easy game to spend a lot of time in, at least it has been so far. But I haven't really found myself getting, like, those eureka moments of, like, okay, now I understand, you know, what I'm supposed to do. Like, I've learned a new mechanic that's really gonna benefit me for the long-term, you know, benefit of the game, to you know, use the same word again, like I just learned the English language 2 days ago, but there we go. I'll consider myself content with that. Like, I haven't encountered too many levels where I'm like, this is elegant and perfect, and I feel like I've learned something about the world that I inhabit here, if that makes sense. There have been some levels that have come relatively close, but at the same time, there's been some levels where I'm like, it's good enough, right? Some levels where I'm just like, this is good enough to succeed. I don't know. I wonder if we're supposed to go up this way first and then come down the other way. So this is one of the things the game does extremely well, is the way it handles momentum. So, ooh, that was bad. Where we make our jump here is going to make a huge difference in our actual momentum. Those, again, visual style, your mileage may vary. I do think a lot of people are probably going to be like, it's kind of generic. I think that's the point, though, is that it's minimalistic, to use the more polite word for it, and it works and it doesn't work. You know, it's not the most visually striking game out there, but everything is communicated effectively in the visual language, at least, if I can use one of my, like, most overused phrases. Wonder if we get a little bit of extra speed if we can make this happen? Probably not. I think that this is not intentional. Okay, you know what we might want to do is come up through here, fall straight down. Oh, that did not kill us. Okay, I was sure that we were fucked. That was not a good way to do that, but we're learning a little bit more about the world that we inhabit here, and then... Oh, that one did kill me, though? Okay, well, we were, like, close to death on the earlier one, then. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm starting to get my point across decently here with N++, where I've had a good time with the game so far, but I also do find myself being like, without being rude, is this it? Like, is this what I've been looking forward to here? Mechanically, it's good, and I'm probably missing out on a little bit of the extra elegance as a result of my own idiocy, but at the same time, I do find myself sort of being like, you know, I don't see myself becoming the best in the world at this, and I don't know if there's that much for you if you're not the kind of person who's interested in being like 100% min-maxy, like I'm gonna play this while not worrying about being great at it, because like the thing that I think strikes me as incongruent is the fact that it's, you know, meant to be a hardcore platformer, but the levels to beat are not that difficult. And in Super Meat Boy, to, you know, use an unfair comparison again and again, the game is hard to master, but your first experience beating Super Meat Boy is very difficult as well. Even if you're going like no bandages, you know, that is a tough game, at least the first time through, and obviously, you know, that muscle memory sticks with you to a pretty large extent, but I do find myself just sort of being like, I have to police myself in many ways. So I'm like, it's too easy to just beat the level. If you don't worry about your leaderboard score, though, you're just kind of like, you know, making the jump over the spike as is necessary. It's not necessarily the easiest thing in the world, but it's not as difficult as I guess I assumed it would be going in. I guess I expected to kind of be punished a little bit more. If you're gonna try to go for like every single collectible that you can get, it is gonna be tough. But I find myself largely being like, if I wasn't making it harder on myself, I don't know if the level of challenge would be here, and I don't know if I was not doing this for a video, if I would be that interested in making it hard on myself. So we're gonna beat this level. But when you do get into that flow state, it's the same as, you know, any game, oh, I'm fucked. It's the same as any game in the genre, you know? When you get into that flow state, it feels really good. And I'll tell you, when you finally suss out a level that has, like, you know, light puzzle-solving elements, you feel like you are the world's greatest video game player of all time. And there's several things I can't deny are, like, basically objective positives about N++. There are actually a ton of levels. It took me about an hour to beat, like, the 30 episodes that you saw, and the 30 episodes that you saw had 5 levels each. That's like 150 levels. Your global rank is 5. Okay, maybe I'm not as bad at N++ as I thought. There are also a lot of kind of options here. It does have local co-op. I'm a little bit bummed out that it doesn't have any form of online co-op, but that's just, it's a requisite complaint at this point, you know? It happens all the time, and I understand why. You can also create a level. I don't really mess around with level editor stuff, and it honestly would be disingenuous for me to do so, because I have no intention to do so, but that does open up the ability to browse for other levels as well. And as you can see, there are a lot of these levels right off the bat. This is my first time coming in here, but, you know, the best list is already extraordinarily curated. So if you like what you see, and you think you'd enjoy this, and, you know, you're a fan of games like perhaps this one right here, it's very convenient, then I think one of the things you definitely cannot knock the game for is robustness. Like, this is an extremely content-rich game. There's a ridiculous number of levels. Mind you, each level is, you know, anywhere from 30 to 3 seconds long. So it's not that much in terms of hours necessarily, but when you add it up, it probably still is a lot in terms of hours. There's also a story. You are a ninja. Your godlike speed, dexterity, jumping power, and reflexes are all the result of an amazingly fast metabolism. Tragically, so is your natural lifetime of 1.5 minutes. Like all ninjas, you have an unquenchable thirst for gold, a natural propensity for exploring rooms infested by increasingly lethal ninja-killing robots, and a devout belief in N. And the way of the ninja is a highly advanced spiritual blah blah blah. Anyway, you get the idea. Again, co-op and race, you know, they allow you to do levels in a kind of a different fashion, but I don't really see the purpose personally of this if we're just gonna be playing it through by ourselves, you know? Like, I guess what we're supposed to do is go as fast as possible, but when I'm just playing it through by myself, that doesn't seem like it's necessarily the most likely source of amusement for me. And again, I guess it depends what you're getting out of these games. Like, are you the kind of person who plays these games and just wants to succeed and, like, see all the levels? Because if you are that kind of person, I think that there's a little bit less in N++ than there is in some of its contemporaries. If you're the kind of person who plays to, like, be the best in the world, then there's a ton here, and I think that you're gonna get your money's worth, probably. We can also adjust the mood. I'm not gonna play hot because that hurts my eyes, but I've been playing on evening, I think, which has been nice, and I think you can also go to the social tab here and follow Metanet Software on Twitter if you're interested. But I mean, we'll do a couple more levels here, but that's pretty much it for N++. I mean, it should be relatively clear where my opinion lies on the game. I think it's an absolutely adequate game, but I do find myself being like, maybe this isn't quite what I thought it was. Not to say that it's bad, but I do find myself in many ways being like, if you're not playing this to get everything, you're missing out on a lot. And I'm the kind of person, you've seen me play other games. I don't care about side quests very much most of the time. I don't care about optional collectibles. I care about, you know, getting from point A to point B and having fun doing it. And it's not that I'm not having fun playing N++. I'm just like, man, I wish they made it harder to get from point A to point B. And you may listen to that and say, this guy, like, has no idea what he's talking about. And that's your right. But I have found myself, if I'm being as brutally honest as I'll allow myself to be, a little underwhelmed. Especially considering, I've been waiting for the game for a while. I was stoked when it came out for PS4. I thought it was going to have a concurrent release on PC, and that's, it's not necessarily fair to be like, to hold that against them. But after waiting for it for a while, I'm a little bit like, where's my Super Meat Boy 2? Which is not, again, a fair expectation to put on them. But if you know what you're... Okay, we're still safe. If you know what you're getting into, I think that sets you up for a little bit more appointment than disappointment, if that makes sense. I guess I maxed out here. We'll do like one more episode. Why not here? We'll come over to A-double... You know what? Let's go down to B-double-O. See if we can learn something here. There have been some levels that have been really good so far, and I hope that we come across them. This one seems pretty easy, but there's a lot less... There's a lot less design that makes me like really go, oh, now I see what you're gonna try to do. In most episodes, it seems like there might be like 1 or 2 levels where you're like, I mean, this one's kind of cool. I get that you just want to coast over the top here, it seems, if you want to maintain like maximum speed. But rarely do I find myself being like, oh, that's a cool gimmick for this level. It really does for better or for worse, and I think it's mostly for better, actually, but adhere pretty strictly to the central mechanic of, like, this is a game that's about pure movement. Like, your momentum is everything. And it really does, it respects its own elegance, which I get sounds like almost a negative, but I don't mean it like that. It has like a belief and an adherence to its own systems and philosophy that I'm sure for a lot of players is going to make the game feel very pure. For me personally, it doesn't totally jive with me, but that might be, error between controller and computer, if you know what I mean, even though that doesn't make any sense. All right, I'm into that level. This one looks a little confusing. I do sometimes find myself also being overwhelmed, and like if I see multiple elements, oh yeah, we don't want to be there. If I see like multiple elements I'm not interested in, I'm like, you know what? We're just gonna run through this level. And I guess it's a strength of the game that you have the flexibility to do so. Like if you don't wanna, I've been framing it as a negative this whole time, and I do think there's something to that because it makes it quite easy to just do the bare minimum, We're wearing the bare minimum pieces of flair here. But, It is, I guess, also possibly a positive, depending on who you are. That was really bad. That maybe you find yourself being like, I just want like a casual platformer that lets me feel like all those hours I invested as a child in NES classics have been well spent. I know that N Plus has like a huge, or at least has still, I'm not sure. It's better to ask Nick about that. But it has a huge fan base. It was extremely popular. I would hesitate to even say cult classic. I would just say like, well-respected, maybe classic. Also, if you talking about classics, does my name get brought up? I remember I couldn't afford a Ford Escort or even a 4-track recorder. So it's only right that I let the top drop on the drop-top Porsche convince yourself that's important. Excuse me while I miss one and then have to jump backwards. But yeah, if you're the kind of person who's like, I just want to beat the levels and feel good about myself, there's I thought we could do it. There's an element of that here. But I still, the central complaint is a little unusual. I'll admit, it's the kind of thing that you might be saying, like, I've never heard that be a complaint for a game before. But I do find myself being like, just fuck my shit up. Just be harder to be okay at this game. Anyway, to be just okay. This is N++. Lot to like. Not all of it from a design perspective hits me 100%. You're just gonna die there. What are you doing, man? Can also change our music, I suppose, here if we wanted to. Like, you guys got any Skinnerd? You got any Skinnerd in here? Apparently not. But in any case, from an audio-visual standpoint, the graphic design, not necessarily my favorite, or the art direction, I should say, not necessarily my favorite, but it's got its own unique charm, and the music is fine, it's ambient, doesn't distract from the gameplay, creates a good mood and atmosphere. But I find it just a little, like a cut below the true classics of the genre, namely Super Meat Boy. But that being said, you can't just play Super Meat Boy forever and ever and ever unless you're Nick, and N++ seems to be a pretty decent addition to the genre, even if it doesn't resonate with me 100%. So I'm giving it, a little handshake, a little come see, come saw, but mostly like a lukewarm positive reception right now. If you want to pick it up, it is available on Steam. If it's $20, It's a little rich for my blood, but you certainly can't argue against it from a strict, like, levels per dollar standpoint. But apart from that, again, that link is in the video description below on Steam if you're interested in picking it up. If you enjoyed the episode, click the like button. It helps out a great deal. And, of course, subscribe if you want to see more in the future. But for now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.